So for those of you who are just joining me, welcome. This is a mini learning lunch workshop, part 5 of 8. And if you missed the first 4 parts, you can go down to the link below and you can find access to those links and videos down there. So what I like to do is I always like to do a quick review. One thing I really ask people to do at the beginning of the series is to really get real and honest with themselves about what is truly lifting them up in life and what is pulling them down. Next, I ask them to consider to shift their focus to mostly those things in life that are lifting them up, and then also consider doing a little bit of a tune-up, maybe an overhaul or a trade-in of the things that are pulling them down. But one thing that I realized is I never really talked about what is a tune-up, what is an overhaul, and what is a trade-in. Now, my book coming out in June will actually tell you what these things are, but let me give you a really quick, brief description of what I'm talking about. Similar to a car, people in life may also need a tune-up, an overhaul, or a trade-in. A tune-up is when you or one other person experience one of those categories that you chose together. And then you two can work together on your own, or you just individually as a person, to tune up, make small changes over time that will make that experience better. An overhaul is when you personally, or you and another person that you're sharing an experience with, have maybe tried to tune things up together. Either you've tried it on your own or you've tried to tune it up with this other person, but things really aren't working out. And so now you need to step outside and you need to get a third party involved. So, if it's in the physical realm, like maybe with your body or whatever, you might need to get a nutritionist or a doctor or a fitness trainer. If it's like some mental or emotional issues, either within yourself or within certain relationships, then maybe you need to get a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist involved. You get the idea. Basically, a tune-up is when you can kind of do it yourself, and an overhaul is when you need a third party to help you. A trade-in is just like it sounds, and it's just like a car. When you're driving a car, maybe you tried the tune-up, maybe you tried the overhaul, and it is still having issues. At that point, what you need to do is you need to decide, is it time to actually let that thing go and trade it in for something else? So that's a really brief explanation of tune-ups, overhauls, and trade-in. Now, whether you're considering a tune-up, overhaul, or trade-in, I have found that one of the things that many people struggle with during that process is communication. Communication with the other person that you might be trying to tune up or overhaul things with. Communication with just people in your life in general. And those conversations, especially if you're trying to tune things up or overhaul them, or even let them go, can be very difficult and awkward. There's always a chance of hurting and scaring people. So whether you are ready to take back your personal power and flow simply by wanting some more tips of how to better communicate with people, especially those who might be against communication, or if this topic is just sensitive and something you want to learn about, or you want these tips and strategies to help you while you're tuning up or overhauling, then this is the episode for you. So let's get started. All right, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your browser. You're going to type in highest possibility states, highestpossibilitystates.com. That will take you to this website, and you're going to click on free resources. All right, so you're going to scroll down until you see part 5 of 8. This is kind of under construction, so this top part will still look the same, but you're going to start to see thumbnails for the actual videos here, so that part will be just a little different, but this part will still be the same. And you'll notice it'll say click here to access the video, which will be available later after I'm done publishing it. but this part should still already be here. It'll say click to download for the transcript. So you're just going to click here to download if you would actually like this. And all I'm really going to do is just narrate something that I wrote back in 2020. All right, so I already kind of went over this part of the transcript. I actually talked to you very personally about that. But here's what I am going to narrate for you. Okay, I'm going to move this over just a little bit so that we can see the rest of the words. I wonder if I can kind of stretch this out. Okay, so that you don't have to see my messy background. All right, here we go. Communication is the breath of life in any relationship, but it is not always easy. I have found that one of the number one problems in many relationships is the lack of communication. That is the lack of openness from someone within the communication cycle because they have no desire to see a situation from another person's point of view, or they deem the other person's point of view as being invalid. Another stumbling block that can get in the way of communication is fear. Fear that their voice will not be heard, their feelings won't be validated, or fear that the wants and needs of both parties will collide rather than harmonize, which will cause both parties to have to make some difficult and possibly undesirable decisions. Therefore, they would rather avoid the subject and keep holding on to patterns and beliefs that no longer serve one or both parties involved. As a society, we often lock each other into prisons of shame and judgment, which lead to stalemates in the communication process. More often than not, I have found that this is due to some deep-seated social obligation and or cultural beliefs. What I have found, however, is that stalemates can lead to stagnation, which can lead to depression and possibly the death of one person's feelings or the relationship itself over time. And even though conversations can be difficult, it is imperative that they be had so that all parties can stay open, so that there's nothing clogging the pipes of the relationship. Open flow and communication actually create stronger bonds, and trust is reinforced, and all the needs of the parties are being met. So here's a little challenge. How often do you stop and think about your beliefs and where they came from, and if they are or are not serving you? How often do you or don't you communicate with the people around you about your beliefs, your values, or how your relationship is going? Opening up the lines of communication. The ideal situation would be for everyone involved to simply just be able to communicate about the experiences that they're having together in an open, non-judgmental, compassionate state. But sometimes, as stated previously, this doesn't happen because some people fear and they think that the conversation could lead to conflict, and that could even lead to the end of the relationship, which triggers fears of abandonment. Yet if someone can open up and practice courage through communication and create a space of safety, they just might find that they can simply tune up or overhaul what's been causing a conflict, and new life could be created. But what if someone doesn't want to communicate? One of the worst things people can do is stop the line of communication. Imagine a sewage or an ejector pump in a home that gets clogged and stops working. What would happen? A mess. Relationships are no different. Strong, consistent, compassionate communication allows the emotions of all parties to flow freely rather than creating pent-up emotions that explode, leaving nothing but a big mess and hurt feelings behind. Therefore, when the lines of communication stop, it is time to consider how to fix the problem. Below are 5 tips on how to make that happen. Before you begin communicating, number 1, know your why. Do you want to talk in order to accuse and belittle the person that you want to talk to? Or do you want to try to figure things out from their point of view? Why they might be displaying cold shoulder behavior? Number 2, check yourself. Before attempting to talk to someone else, check yourself. Are you calm or are you still angry? Will your will your tone be polite or accusatory? Is your posture open or is it closed? Tone and body language is 90% of communication. Also, people tend to mirror the behavior and attitude of the other person they're interacting with. So if your tone is harsh or closed off, so too will be theirs. Yet if your tone is calm and caring and your body language is open, even if the other person doesn't start off that way, watch how their tone and body language will change to start mimicking yours. This is what psychologists call co-regulation. Number 3, be ready to be open. Be ready to see the situation from another point of view rather than your own. Theirs. All feelings are valid, whether or not you feel their participation of them is not. Their perception of them is not. Sometimes it is easy to see things from another point of view, which may in turn cause you to change yours. Other times it is difficult, and then at those times you just agree to disagree. Or sometimes one person said, I do believe that is how you are experiencing things, but this is how I am experiencing things. So that might be another way to approach the subject. If you need to, perform a little CPR. I'm not talking about chest compressions. I'm talking about concern, pattern, and relationship. So if the conversation is getting kind of, show your concern. Be ready to address the concern by using I statements. I feel the need to talk about the situation where. Pattern. Identify the pattern that seems to be preventing the communication. I feel the need to talk about the situation where the last 2 times I tried to talk to you, you said, I don't know, or I don't want to talk about this. Relationship. Focus on the relationship and not on the person, the common purpose or the vision that will move the relationship forward, and also ask for their point of view. So now I'm going to put all 3 of these together. I really feel the need to talk about this situation where the last 2 times I tried to talk about it, you said, I don't know, or I don't want to talk about this. I know talking about this can be tough. I don't want it to be tough, but I want to address it so that our relationship can move forward. Why do you think this topic is so tough to talk about? Number 4, make it mutual. After having the conversation, see if you and all parties involved can come to a mutual agreement on how to best move forward. If they still won't talk or the situation gets tough, give each other time to recover. Review, extend, consistency, overview, view the preview, encourage, review, and replay. Just notice I mistyped overview. Sorry. All right, the recover process. Review the goal. My hope is that we can talk about this again later so that we can solve this problem and keep our relationship moving forward. This is very, very valuable. Extend the space and time. Sometimes people just really aren't ready to talk. So then you can say to them, I can see you need some space and time to think about this. I will give you, and then be specific. When I'm talking to a student, I might say, I'm going to come back in 5 minutes. Or if you're dealing with a really tough situation, say, I'm going to come back in an hour or 24 hours. Be specific. To think about this again, I would like to meet you and then set the location and set the time so that we can talk about this, and then leave. And leave that person alone for that time that you said that you would. That part is also very important. Unless, this sometimes happens, that person comes to you first. Okay? So you're going to leave, you're going to extend that time. But if that person does come to you before the time is up, then you can continue to have that conversation. Note, the shortest amount of time I would recommend for reconnection is 1 hour. So this is how long it takes for brain chemicals to switch back, because if you get heated, then what's going to happen is they're going to go into fight or flight. And then their chemicals literally in their brain will switch where they cannot hear you and they cannot talk rationally. So the minimum amount of time that I would give someone, especially if that fight or flight has been triggered, yelling, screaming, backing away, whatever, the minimum amount of time I would say is an hour, because then once their brain chemicals have calmed down, they are back in that place where they can speak rationally again. All right. So you are going to review the goal, you're going to extend the space and time, and you're going to be specific about it and be consistent with communication, as well as following through on the reconnecting time. If you say, I want to meet at this time to talk about it, make sure you actually follow through and meet up on that time. Overview. When you finally do reconnect back, allow the person that you're trying to communicate with to give you an overview of the situation. Don't tell them what you think it is, okay? This will allow you to see if they've heard you correctly, as well as have you hear it from their point of view. Plus, it kind of creates this safe space for them to be able to talk. Preview a consequence. If the person is still refusing to communicate during the second check back, then you need to preview a consequence. I know this conversation is tough, but if we don't talk about it, I feel as though it's not going to be addressed. And then we're going to continue to be angry with each other, which will cause anxiety, depression, loneliness, for us to turn to other people for support. If we can't resolve this issue, perhaps we need some time apart. So you do need to kind of preview the consequence. But then after you do that, you also need to encourage. After previewing, you want to follow up with something like, I would rather we talk about this and move forward so that we can feel happy, connected, like we can turn to each other, okay? Because if you don't do that encouraging part, all they're going to hear is the bad part, and then that might trigger in their fight or flight again. And then you're going to review and replay. If a conversation was able to be had, have each member involved review their understanding of the problem, of what it was, and how it will be resolved moving forward. As a side note, sometimes restorative justice questions can be very helpful during this time, as they are non-judgmental, and they could also help open up the line of communication even further, or allow people to see things from multiple points of view. What happened? Why do you think that is? How are you affected? How are those around you affected? What's been the hardest part for you in this, and how can we make this right? If a conversation was not had, review the consequence and encouragement, or put the consequence in place. I hope that this has helped someone today, so that you can use your own personal power to first help yourself and then help others around you, as well as your newfound communication skills. Because now more than ever, the world needs it, and it needs you, and it needs a lot more better, clear communication. Join me tomorrow as I repost a video about the difference between mindfulness, meditation, and reflection. Because what's going to happen after this communication process, after you think about your tune-ups, your trade-ins, and your overhauls, is you're constantly going to want to reflect. Where are you in the process, in case you do need to make more tune-ups, more overhauls, okay? And so join me tomorrow as I repost a video that I already did, but it still has valuable information about how we can use meditation, mindfulness, and visualization during this reflective process to help us determine which one of those three things we might need in our life. I hope that this again has helped someone, so you can help yourself and help the world around you. Peace and blessings.